Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are unlocking something literally game-changing. You know those incredibly dense, heavy reading comprehension passages, the ones that just make your eyes instantly glaze over? Well, imagine for a second if you had a proven, foolproof superpower that let you understand those complex texts perfectly on the very first read, like every single time. That's exactly what we're breaking down today. We're going to walk through a highly tactical, proven method to completely dominate difficult texts and pick the correct answers with absolute 100% confidence.
Because look, we've all been there, right? You're staring at this dense wall of text, you finally get to the bottom of the paragraph, and you realize you've absorbed absolutely nothing. So what do? You go back and you reread it again. And then probably again. You fall right into the agonizing trap of passive reading. But honestly, struggling with these passages doesn't mean the text is too hard for you. It really doesn't. It just means you're processing it the wrong way. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our exact roadmap to fix this. 1. The dense reading superpower. 2. Rule 1, accuracy is king. 3. Phase 1, active reading. 4. Phase 2, bulletproof answers. And finally, number 5, the ultimate safety net.
Starting right off with Section 1, the dense reading superpower. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive mindset shift we have to make here. When you get eaten alive by a difficult passage, it's actually not a comprehension problem, it's a process problem. See, passive reading is this vicious cycle. You skim, you miss crucial words, your brain makes these loose assumptions to kind of fill in the gaps, and then you're stuck rereading the text 10 times just to get a mediocre grasp of it. By the time you reach the answers, you're toast. On the flip side, active reading is where you are constantly engaging, predicting what comes next, and locking it in perfectly on that very first read.
Which brings us to Section 2. Rule 1. Accuracy is king.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it exposes a massive myth. Accuracy matters so much more than speed, period. When you try to rush because you're sweating the clock, you start taking shortcuts. You stop fully understanding the words, and honestly, that's exactly what test designers are hoping you'll do. You might think, hey, if I skim and guess on a question with 4 options, I've got a 25% shot, right? No way. When you skim dense passages, your chances actually drop to less than 25%. Why? Because the test makers are geniuses at engineering trap answers. They specifically design wrong choices to perfectly mimic the loose assumptions a confused, skimming brain makes. This brings us to kind of a beautiful paradox. You actually have to slow down to speed up. Taking that extra time to properly chew on and digest the text up front, that saves you massive amounts of time on the back end. Because you're never wasting minutes frantically rereading the same paragraph, and you're not agonizing over the answer choices. Once you understand it perfectly the first time, you just zip through the options and confidently nail the winner.
Let's jump into Section 3. Phase 1, active reading.
Okay, there's a literal 4-step framework for this dense reading strategy. Steps 1 and 2, they happen while you're physically in the text. Steps 3 and 4 happen when you move down to the answers. Let's break down Step 1.
Step 1 is chunking. Basically, this is the act of stopping every 3 to 5 words. Yep, you heard me, every 3 to 5 words. You must force yourself to fully digest and understand that tiny little phrase before you allow your eyes to move to the next segment. This is where you absolutely cannot be lazy. You've got to be strict. If you don't understand what you just read, don't just blindly keep going. Stop, process it, and only move forward when it makes perfect sense.
Right. Step 2 is predict the passage. So, while you're chunking your way through, you want to continuously ask yourself, where's this going? Try to anticipate the logic and flow of the very next sentence. This is basically a real-time litmus test for your brain. If you can accurately predict where the text is heading, boom, it proves you've actually understood it. Plus, doing this keeps your brain so highly engaged that you literally won't even have the chance to get bored, even if it's the driest scientific passage imaginable.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, Phase 2, bulletproof answers.
So, you've actively read the passage and you've got it perfectly on the first try. Awesome! Now it's time to navigate the incredibly dangerous minefield of the answer choices. But before we hit the final steps, we really need to understand the enemy here: idea implanting. This is this wild phenomenon where wrong answers literally trick a confused brain. See, if you read passively and only have a mediocre understanding, your brain is just full of holes. When you read a cleverly written wrong answer, it implants a false idea that perfectly plugs those gaps. You think, oh yeah, that sounds about right, and bam, you fall right into the trap.
So, how do we defeat idea implanting? With Step 3, predict the correct answer first. After you finish the passage, but crucially, before you even let yourself glance at the answer choices, you must lock in your own prediction of what the correct answer should be, even if it's just the core logic. By building your own answer first, you create an impenetrable shield. Those trap choices can't implant ideas into your head because your understanding is already solidified.
So the crucial point is how you actually evaluate the choices. And that brings us to step 4, going word by word. You do not read the whole answer choice as one fluid sentence. No way. You evaluate it word by word. After every single word, you pause and ask yourself, is this correct so far? The second you hit a single word, literally even just a tiny adjective, that isn't supported by the text, you eliminate that entire answer and move on. Do this and you will never miss a hidden trap again.
Moving right along to Section 5, the ultimate safety net. When you combine these 4 steps, chunking, predicting the passage, predicting the answer, and going word by word, you construct what we call the ultimate safety net. Let's look at exactly how the math works here. First, the objectively right answer has every single word explicitly supported somewhere in the text. Second, every single wrong answer has at least one word that is completely made up. Therefore, to actually get a question wrong, you have to mess up twice. You have to mistakenly think the right answer is missing a word, and you have to mistakenly think a wrong answer is 100% in the text. When you evaluate word by word, messing up twice is almost mathematically impossible.
Now look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Doing this, stopping every 3 words, constantly predicting the text, evaluating answers word by word, it is actually going to physically hurt your brain at first. It feels slow, it feels tedious. But here's the secret. All it takes is a little practice. Pull up just 20 incredibly difficult, dense reading comprehension questions. Force yourself to use this exact 4-step process. By the time you hit question 20, what felt impossibly hard is going to become a totally natural, instinctive habit.
It really all comes down to a choice. You can just keep doing what you've always done, skimming, assuming, falling for those clever traps, and letting the text eat you alive. Or you can put in the reps. Are you ready to trade the lazy comfort of skimming for the superpower of unbreakable accuracy? Give this dense reading strategy a try today, and just ask yourself, what other impossible text could you conquer if you simply changed your process?